With Virgin Media, you can build up the entertainment and tear down the price. Switch to Virgin Media today and get superfast broadband and TV for just €49 a month for an awesome 12 months. The sale that stacks up. Now on. See virginmedia.ie and check out how our mobile sales stacks up too.
T's and C's apply. See virginmedia.ie. 12-month contract. Offer ends 27th of February 2019.
Hey, everybody.
Hi. From Salt Lake City, Utah,
It's Thank God I'm Atheist.
the podcast.
I'm Frank.
And I'm Adam, sitting in for Dan.
Coming up on today's episode, we are going to, we have a movie review.
Movie review, yeah.
And then we're going to talk about Adam's dizzies. He's had a case of the dizzies.
My dizzy spells.
And we're going to put a nice little sort of rational atheist little discussion
in there.
thing on
I
there.
do like that it makes me sound like I'm like the wife of a plantation owner, though, where I'm just like, it's too hot out and I've got the vapors and I have to go lay down.
You're having another one of your spells.
Exactly. I have to go have a mint julep.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, let's start with that, actually. If we're already there.
We're there.
This is a good thing to start with.
Yeah, we can kind of mix things up a little bit.
So for the last month, I've been dealing with both dizzy spells, and I've been having my eyesight's been blurry. And what's weirder is that I've been having sort of seeing. Not seeing lights like lights that aren't there, but just like light affects my eyes in a strange way. There's sort of tracers and lines and things. Just from recently going to the doctor after having to do, I told you about the whole Clockwork Orange. They had to put goggles on and make
crazy
me dizzy
sounding.
and just awful, strange things that no one should ever have to go through. I felt like Reagan McNeil in The Exorcist, right? Where she's like got the big machine rolling over her head and she's like, "Mommy, it hurts." And so essentially, they came up with the conclusion that I have an atypical migraine, what they refer to as a silent migraine, right?
Okay.
And so there's usually not a headache attached to it, at least not in the beginning.
Right.
They got me on medication and everything now. I'm sure I'm going to be fine. But this is something that we started talking about. We started talking about this idea of what it was that I was seeing, which they call auras.
Right. My immediate reaction was, oh my God. Like, just thinking about how this is just a state that you're going to be in for a number of months, maybe at sort of on the long end, right? It was sort of what you were saying.
Yeah.
But I was really thinking about how that sounds like revelation.
Exactly.
How that sounds like spiritual. I mean, if you were, instead of you in, 2012, instead a priest or a monk or
in like the 1600s, right?
Some sort of an ascetic of some kind.
I think even a boy in a village somewhere, right? He has the sight. Because I looked it up here and we've got oracle, prophet. Let's start. So oracle, priest or priestess or other creature through whom a god is believed to speak.
Sure.
Prophet, one who claims to have received divine messages or insights. Shaman, person thought to possess spiritual and healing powers, right? And omen, sign of future events. And so, I mean, it could be everything from like some kid has a migraine, right? And he looks out across the village square to a building and he's like, it looks funny, it looks like there's lights around it, and then that night lightning hits that building just because of chance and it burns to the ground. They make that boy the king.
Or not that night. It could be 2 months later or within a reasonable spell of time, something very minor happens and instead this kid is like lifted up as a seer.
Or they kill him. I'm kind of going like Salem witch trials here.
Those were the two possibilities.
Well,
right?
You think about things like
if they believed him, those were the two possibilities.
Right. Well, you know how Freud always kind of talked about this idea of the pressure and the madness of the crowd, right? And the idea of that, if you have a group of people that are acting strange, the odds of you just starting to act strange also is greater, right? And so you think about something like the witch trials, and it's like, these were kids that started this thing, where there were like two little girls who were swearing and throwing rocks and being generally just little assholes, and that somehow translated into other kids doing it too. And then what do the authorities do? Well, they must all be possessed. Right. Like, that's the only logical conclusion, is everyone here must be possessed. And it's like, really, it could have been the most nominal thing that nowadays we know, like, oh, it's ADHD. Right. It's just like, we don't have to kill anyone. No one has to die.
Well, and recently there was that case in upstate New York. Oh. And it was a bunch of teenage girls who started involuntarily twitching and clapping and fluttering fingers.
This is recently?
This was...
God, because this honestly sounds
August.
This sounds exactly like the Salem witch trial stuff. I mean, this is the same way that stuff started.
I think we might have talked about it in one of, like, the really, really early episodes.
Wow. What did they end up thinking it was? What did they...
Well, at first, they were like, what's in the water? What's going on? What's affecting our teenage girls, our population in general? And they were like, well, why only teenage girls? And then this and then that. And they were like, oh, well, you know, maybe it's some weird chemical release or something that girls would be susceptible to. Right. And then, like, the CDC and other sort of experts were just like, well, there is this other thing that it could be. It could just... The teenage girls are, they're very susceptible to suggestion.
They're doing all this weird behavior, and it's getting them all of this attention. And like, why would they keep doing it? It's just getting them all this attention. Yeah. Teenagers aren't like that.
No,
are
not
they?
At all. Right. And so, but anyways, they're not doing it to get the attention. It's more that there's now sort of this suggestion in the community. Right. That this is something that could happen to you, and so you're likely to do it.
Oh yeah. Right? Oh, there's a whole thing about a laughing disorder, and I can't. It was, I think it was some studies done in the 60s and 70s of these communities where the entire community was overcome with laughing fits for like weeks at a time. Yeah. But there were these little remote communities out in the middle of nowhere. So, I mean, I think it all comes back, like you said, to this idea of hysteria, but then also, to just general mental illness. Like, anytime that somebody gets depressed, you think about what we know now about psychosis and hearing voices, having auditory and visual hallucinations. I mean, that really, if that doesn't sound like either Nostradamus or Joseph Smith, then you know what I mean? You like, God spoke to you and he opened a seal and he showed you things. And it's like, we have pills for that now. Yeah. You just need a good dose of Seroquel and God will stop talking to you. Yeah. So,
yeah. Anyways, well, speaking of water, and the need for clean water, actually, I'm going to...
Your segues are just adorable.
Well, thank you. There's and this is what's interesting about this story is that it's being sort of tied in and linked into sort of the Christian evangelical goodness. Okay, so there's a social entrepreneur, which is interesting that they're not actually calling it that in the articles that I've read. Nobody's actually put social and entrepreneur together, and maybe just because the place that we work, we're a little more aware of that as a concept. Yeah. But anyways, so this guy who used to be a Christian youth minister, sort of had this moment, this revelation that he calls it.
Oh, yeah. Again, that mental illness.
Well, no, I think this is just a Christian dude.
Yeah, just revelation.
An evangelical type.
Be careful with the word.
He had an idea to sell bottled water that where 100% of the net profits would go to fund clean water projects in Haiti, Asia, and Africa.
Oh,
great idea.
Sure.
Like set up a for-profit entity that puts all of its profits into a nonprofit, right?
It's a Reader's Digest story waiting to happen.
It's wonderful, right? Wonderful thing that he's doing. And so what he did is he entered the Get on the Shelf contest being sponsored by Walmart, which was a sort of send us your ideas. we'll put them on our web. People can vote for them.
Right. Okay.
And whichever one comes out on top, we have like some select stores around the country, and we'll put your product out there in front of the people and let them sort of, let them buy it.
Yeah, we'll just we'll give you this
Right.
platform. Right.
And so he ends up winning because of a strong social network marketing campaign.
Yeah, can't lose.
Can't lose.
Can't lose.
He understood the technology and all this kind of stuff. And then he says, it's so ridiculously improbable that the only thing I can say is that it's a miracle. That he came up with the idea, that he found people who supported it and who would give him sort of some seed money, and that then that through the whole process, he's like, because I started out studying, it was like broadcast communications or something, like it was totally not, to become a youth minister.
Right.
And then he's like, and then I became a youth minister, and now I'm running an organization that sells bottled water.
And
gives
again,
all the profits
I know that the joke is like 2 years old, but it's the same argument against the Insane Clown Posse song. Not everything is a miracle. When we start saying that just a giraffe is a miracle because it is one, it's a slippery slope.
When you have
not everything is a miracle.
You have a good idea.
Yeah.
Other people believe in it because it's a good idea. So you get all the initial support from business people.
One of the largest corporations in the world decides to be like, yeah, sure, we'll give you some space to sell your product. Like it does not constitute a miracle.
It's not a miracle.
It's not a miracle.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
It came out of your own head.
Yeah. You know what else was a good idea? I put on pants today and decided to leave the house.
It's a miracle.
Yeah.
Adam's wearing pants.
Now, if I was a paraplegic, then it would be a miracle.
That you're walking out the door?
Yes.
But would that still be a miracle? Surely there'd be an explanation.
Yeah.
Is that a miracle?
I mean, what would be a miracle to you? What would have to happen in your life for you to be like, there is no other explanation?
Whew. Really?
How far out do you have to go?
I don't know.
Pretty far?
It's pretty far. Like okay, so something in my life.
See, because this is always the thing that I've said.
Don't know.
This is always the thing that I've said about.
I don't view the world that way.
I've always said this about Christ, the idea of Christ's second coming. Is there anything that he could do? You have every news channel, every blogger, every single person has a live feed of a camera focused right on Jesus as he's come back for the second time, and he's here, and he has to prove he's God. He has to prove he's actually here, ready to do it. What could he possibly do that would make people not just jump on the internet and be like, troll, this guy isn't the real deal? There's nothing. There's nothing that he could do, because people are like, CGI, they're like,
right.
That's After Effects. I can do that too. Like, there's no miracle. Like, you can't do the miracle anymore, right?
Right.
It's gone.
Well, that's an interesting idea. Like, I mean, I seriously do not know. Do you know what would be a miracle for you?
God, I don't know. I have no idea.
I mean, like, because
I could say
if I all of a
something
sudden woke up,
but,
no, I think we should address it.
I'd be like, find a good parking spot downtown. But like, I can't think of a real thing to say to you that would be, I guess people that I know that are dead, like knocking on my door and coming into my house
that would be a miracle.
And having dinner.
Yeah.
That would be something that I'm like, there's no way that this could be anything other than what it is.
Right.
But that's it. I can't. That still is like, it would have to be that. And even then, I would think that I was ill.
But
I'd be like, I'm having a stroke, obviously.
Do I smell melon?
Yeah, exactly. Is anybody else seeing this? It's just me, right? Well, so did anybody go after this guy about saying that this was a miracle? Or
no, because it's an inspirational story. Like I found this in the religion section.
It is such
like a couple different.
And
sources.
You know what? I said it was a Reader's Digest story, and Abby's parents, God bless them, gave us a subscription to Reader's Digest.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I swear, like 4 fucking years ago, they're still sending it to my house. I have no idea why. They apparently, you pay for 1 year and they just keep sending it to you. But Reader's Digest loves doing this. They love doing the inspirational story and at the end somehow trying to obliquely tie it into God's good work. And they try and do it in this real mellow kind of way of just makes you realize what a gift, what a miracle life is. And like, yeah, I know you guys are Christian. It's cool. God, just leave me alone. You don't have to put it in the end of every story. So a couple teenagers got attacked by a bear. What does that have to do with God? But somehow they tie it in of like the strength of the boys. And it's like, So what if they just let themselves die there in the woods? Then they'd be losers, like
right?
So
yeah.
Miracle.
It's a miracle.
A miracle.
It's a miracle that he had a good idea, and that other people believed in it.
Well,
but it is a good idea, and I hope he is successful at it.
And that was one thing I was going to ask: is he in any way trying to parlay God into this? Is Jesus going to be on the
like
bottle
God
of water?
water?
Yeah,
No, I don't think so. He's calling it humankind water.
Okay.
Which is nice.
Okay.
It seems to be designed to have a broad appeal. He's like, this is a great way for people who, from any background to support water, clean water in some parts of the world that don't have it.
So every bottle doesn't come with a little Jack Chick pamphlet.
No. No.
I love those things, though.
Yeah.
The little, the ones I'm talking about, right? The little chick pamphlets.
Oh yeah.
Little like comic strip ones about, Becky's best friend got into heavy metal. It's always some like.
God. Yeah.
All right, moving on. Let's get into this one. This is our title here is Sacrilegious or Just a Harmless Classroom Assignment.
Okay.
This is essentially about a student drawn picture posted inside of Fresno Unified School. That was part of an assignment. This is a 7th grader that made this. And the assignment was, let's see, I want to find it here. Let's see, students at Hamilton were assigned to create a help wanted. Teachers try to do creative things to get their kids engaged in learning, right?
Sure.
Make a help wanted poster for soldiers needed to fight in the Crusades.
Okay.
We're going to teach you about the Crusades. Now, what would a help wanted poster to get soldiers to be involved?
Trying to get the kids to view that world and that time in a different way.
Unfortunately, you're also talking about trying to do this with one of the bloodiest holy wars in human history.
Right.
Right? Like the massacring of like hundreds of thousands of Turks, right?
Right.
All in the name of God. So what does this kid do? And I'm gonna show it to you. I'm sure we could put this up on the website or something.
Sure,
later.
yeah.
But so it's Jesus.
Oh no.
And he's pointing, and he says, "It says, I want you to kill all infidels." Okay. Now, below that, it also says, "Meet me in Jerusalem and get a free ticket to heaven."
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So, obviously, this sparked some controversy, as you can imagine. Let's see. One of the parents said, "I do believe common sense tells you, hey, this may not be appropriate for a K-8 school, right in the main lobby where each child passes on their way to school and home." He called the principal's office, and the aide said something along the lines of, "I'll see what I can do," and then hung up the phone. So it's still hanging up there right now. Okay.
Okay.
Here's my take.
But parents want it down.
Yes.
Okay.
Here's my take on it. The student should get an A. Because he got the message completely right.
Yeah.
That is as close to a help wanted for the First Crusades poster you could possibly make.
Yeah, sure.
Kill the infidels.
Yeah.
In the name of me, Jesus.
Right.
That's like, and
earn a free ticket into heaven. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Rabbi Rick Weiner, who has a degree in comparative religious studies, he commented on this story. Historically, the Crusades were seen as were a series of religious wars launched by Christians against mostly Muslim people. Rabbi Weiner says it crosses a fine line. This guy with Temple Beth Israel said, "If we want to encourage people to learn the lessons of post-Crusades or post-Holocaust, I generally find it's more effective to do it through images of peace as opposed to images of horror." Now, here's my problem with that. What message does just focusing on the peace possibly tell us about not only that battle, but every other battle that's been fought because of religion ever since?
Right.
If we're not focusing on the religious aspects of like, oh, I don't know, how about the fight over the land between the Palestinians. You know, of course, this is all about religion, and it is all about the horror of religion. And that is as close as you can get, is Jesus pointing right at you and saying, "Kill all these people, and you get a free ticket into heaven." Like that 7th grader has hit the nail on the head. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't think he was trying to be snarky at all. I think he was like, "What?"
Oh, that kid was being snarky.
You think?
Oh, putting
I don't think
Jesus
in 7th grade though.
Yes.
You think?
Or they had a parent who was like, "You know what you should do."
See, I guess I look at it. I guess I'm looking at it through a totally different lens. I feel like that this kid was like, you know what I should, that's exactly what it should be. It should be like Uncle Sam, but instead of it being Uncle Sam, it should be Jesus. And it's to me, that's what I love about the story, is that to me, the innocence of it is palpable. I feel like
I maybe I'm just more suspicious of people and intentions and whatnot, but I would think that it was a parent who was being snarky and was like, "Well, and then like the kid was like, "Yeah, I'll do that," and so draws it all out and they laugh. And the kid already has a funny sense of humor because their dad or mom has a funny sense of humor to begin with. Because I'm sorry, I look at that and that there's some intentional funny in there. The Jesus, first of all, looks like the South Park Jesus.
It does.
So
it looks like a drawing from Napoleon Dynamite.
Right. His understanding of Jesus is not as a participant at Sunday school. His understanding of Jesus is from a totally different sort of pop cultural place.
I might give you that. Okay,
in my mind.
Yeah, you might be right. I guess to me, I just felt like that it was one of those things. And both you and I, we're both instructors, and so we understand this. Mm-hmm. You're working with kids, and there's a point where you feel like you've come up with a really good idea that's going to be creative and get kids engaged, and then they start doing that thing. They start working on the project that you've come up with, and about 20 minutes into it, you start looking around the room, and you're like, "Oh, I just totally lost control of this, and this was a horrible idea." Because it's that thing where it's like you start off wanting to make a PSA about not doing drugs,
sure,
and then 20 minutes later, you have one kid that's dressed up in a costume as a giant joint, and you're like, "Oh, this is a bad idea. This totally got out of hand." Like, it's, our hearts are still in the right place, but this is not what I envisioned. And I feel like that's what happened here. And that's one of the reasons why I love this story. Anyway, that's all I have. It's just, anytime that you have kids, I feel like inadvertently crossing a line.
Oh my God. All right. So, you remember this guy in the Bible, John the Baptist?
Oh, hey.
Yeah.
He's just ahead, right?
Yeah. Well, yes.
Eventually.
He was just ahead. So there's this church in...
I think I heard
have you heard about this one?
About this.
It's crap. Oh, in Bulgaria. It's in Bulgaria somewhere.
Okay.
That has relics of John the Baptist.
Okay.
And they've been carbon dated to the 1st century.
Oh.
And so there's actual sort of now it's credible that these are actually really old bones. They didn't come along later.
So essentially, atheists, game over is what we're trying to say. That's it.
Well,
the discussion's through.
It's not like they had a DNA sample.
No, I'm just saying.
Were able to
Well, finally, though, science has come in to really say that everything in the Bible is true.
Well, what I find interesting about this is that religious folk like carbon dating when it supports them.
Yeah, exactly right.
They like science when it agrees with them.
Let's get that Shroud of Turin back in here. Come on. What do you got to lose now? Look,
I love it. I mean, does
You're
science
totally right.
even matter? Because if the science had come back and said, "No, these are not. These are from the 14th century."
That's because
or something
you're
like
not
that.
looking through the eyes of faith.
Right.
Right.
Well, God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah,
and
totally.
God controls carbon and dating it. Of course.
He'll change it back when you're not looking. That's what God will do. I don't know. I don't know why I automatically switch over to a Southern accent for that one, but it is really.
Yeah.
I mean,
it makes sense.
It is interesting to say. I mean, did they say what the relics are?
Yeah, they've got a tooth and a piece of there's bone.
Now, how do they even...
That I think might have been jawbone, and part of a skull.
But how do they know that that's his? Like, what... I mean,
because, that's the whole thing with all relics. Like,
what is it?
The tradition is, and it's been handed down, and so, so one church in Europe will have, some relics of John the Baptist,
right?
And some other one will have relics of John the Baptist, but they're different parts of the body.
Yeah, there's that old adage about that if you took every sliver that was supposed to be from Christ's cross, the cross would stand like 30 stories tall or something. Like
it was a big cross. He was an important man.
There was a lot to go around. Then the cross was broken into, it's like Lord of the Rings.
Well, it's
scattered across the earth so it could never be put back together.
It's a miracle. That's what they would say.
Again,
right? If you questioned, they're like, "Well, it's a miracle. It's like the loaves and the fishes. There was plenty to go around.
Yeah,
you can't win, right?" But anyways, I just thought this was worth bringing up because I saw the story and I started reading it and I was like, oh, this is podcast worthy. And I was just like, but I don't know, like, who really cares? And then I read the line about the carbon dating. And I was just like, oh, well.
Something that's really interesting, and it's a bit of a tangent, but it has to do with both the idea of science and the idea of it's a miracle. I was just listening last night to a podcast, I think it was To the Best of Our Knowledge or something, and they were talking to a group of scientists that were talking that were discussing how lately there have been so many different quantum physicists who've been trying to find this sort of almost blanket theory in order to explain everything in the universe that right now they're feeling like is hard to explain. This whole idea of how does something come from nothing? How does something just appear out of nothing? Does the universe just, a millionth, billionth of a second after the Big Bang did the universe come into being? They're trying to figure out these things that they don't have answers for that live in this world of quantum physics.
Okay.
And they've been coming. So many of these guys are leaning towards string theory as like, well, string theory would explain all of this, right? Because string theory, lives in this world of just because something we can't see it means that it both is there and isn't there at the exact same time. So these guys were sort of like leaning towards this, and all of these really prominent. I wish I could remember some of these guys' names. It's not people that I know, but they were just talking about these different prominent atheist scientists. Sort of stepped in and said, you guys are essentially doing what monotheism has done, since the birth of man, which is create a being to say that's why, because God made it. And they're like, you're doing the same thing right now with string theory. You want to use it to explain all this stuff that you don't have an explanation for. And it's totally controversial. But I just thought like that same idea of it's a miracle, here with the quantum physicists, they're going, it's string theory.
Right.
You don't look any deeper. We don't need to. We just know it's that. And so it's okay. And it's like, it's pretty funny to have a group of scientists accusing another group of scientists of having too religious a mind when trying to tackle some of these more hard to define problems in the universe.
Sure, yeah.
Just weird. Like it's that same idea though of like, it's a miracle.
Yeah, totally.
Don't dig any deeper.
It's a miracle. Do you remember that show that used to be on like the CW or whatever? And it was John Boy hosting. It was on PAX. Do you remember PAX?
God, yeah.
And actually,
John
PAX
Boy from the Waltons with the big,
the
big mole on his face.
The guy with the
God.
I can't do it.
He's
come
awful.
close to. But anyway, so John Boy. It was John Boy.
I've met him before.
He was hosting this show, and it was called "It's a Miracle," and they would something would happen, and then it was like it's a miracle, and it was like Ripley's Believe It or Not, except it's a miracle. It was so weird.
And every single thing was in no way a miracle.
No, just like what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, it's just like
because you can't explain it doesn't mean that it's a miracle.
Yeah, it's like
because you don't understand. Just because there's no, in your observable world.
Yeah.
Anything that you can see
and that
made something happen,
and that stuff always seems to boil down to being like some golly shucks like middle America, like apple pie kind of story too, like a total Paul Harvey, like there's one more thing we haven't told you. Douglas was an orangutan. You know, it's like, you know, and it's always something where you're just like, it's a miracle. What else? There's no other explanation. Animals don't act like that.
Yeah.
Must be a miracle.
It was,
Boy, nothing I have here is a segue for anything we've been talking about.
Oh, well, that's fine.
Every single time I feel like I'm just cutting in. But
that's fine. Just go for it.
You're so good at them, though, so I feel like I'm ruining it. This is a very interesting one, and I feel like this is one of these things that, like, I don't know. It's you know, it's like the scene in the movie where you've gotten, you know, you feel like you maybe have gotten to like this character, and then all of a sudden, like, he gets turned into a vampire, and you're like, oh no, now he's one of the bad guys, you know? So this is this filmmaker. I want to tell you about a filmmaker named Eric Allen Bell. Okay. He's a documentary filmmaker. He was a fixture at court hearings and protests in 2010 over an Islamic center in, I hate towns with these names, Murfreesboro.
There's no way to know how that's pronounced.
Murfreesboro.
There's no way to know.
It's awful. Yeah.
And if you went to Tennessee, they would. They have something that sounds totally different.
Yeah, they don't know how it's pronounced either. So over this controversy at this Islamic center, so they wanted to build this mosque in Murfreesboro. Okay,
Murfreesboro.
And Eric Allen Bell,
Murfreesboro. Maybe, I don't know.
I think I need to put in some chewing tobacco and then I can pronounce it. So he was making a movie called Not Welcome, which depicted the mosque's. The mosque trying to be built, and the Southern Christians who were not allowing for it to be built, and this whole Islamophobia and all this stuff, right?
Sure.
So he moves down there 2 years ago.
Okay.
And is working with these Muslims in this community and going and interviewing these, bigots or whatever about this. Mm-hmm. Now, he says the mosque is part of a plot to destroy America. He claims that the mosque is built on a foundation of lies in a recent op-ed piece at the anti-Islam site jihadwatch.com.
Wow.
I want to communicate that the biggest threat to humans right now is Islam, he said in a recent phone interview. Mosque supporters feel betrayed by Bell. They wonder if he was a fraud or had been paid off by anti-Muslim groups. Only a hired gun would switch sides like this, said Jay Short of Middleton, Tennessee's for Religious Freedom. Bell, a 44-year-old California native, moved to Murfreesboro in 2008, so he's actually been there for 4 years. Wow. After a previous movie project lost its financing. A self-described liberal, he runs a website about spirituality and meditation called globalone.tv.
So there's nothing in his past that would show that he's ever harbored any anti-Islamic sort of views, that he was probably, pretty touchy-feely little liberal.
Yeah, exactly.
Who was just like, let's hold hands and all get along.
Yeah, and his movie was called Not Welcome. And in fact, his snarky 25-minute long sort of teaser version of the documentary that came out in 2011, he made a blog post along with it called Holy War, y'all. And so he was taking a very lighthearted approach to these guys. But by January, let's see, he'd begun changing sides after learning more about terrorist attacks by Muslims overseas. Bell also read books critical of Islam by Robert Spencer, who runs jihadwatch.com. When he tried to add his new views to the film, he lost his financial backers.
Oh, wow.
Hollywood likes a movie about outsiders being bullied by Southerners, he said. They don't like the story I want to tell. And so he totally switched. And it's like I said, in a way, it's like he got bit by the zombie and turns into a zombie. Like, it's that there's a creepiness to this story that I'm like, I can't wrap my brain around. How does that happen to somebody? And actually, the thing that it reminded me the most of, I don't know if you remember this guy, Steve Drain, who was a documentary filmmaker back in April of 2000. He interviewed all of the Westboro Baptist Church people.
Oh, yeah, the Fred Phelps people.
Yeah, and then he ended up converting. He's one of the only members of the church that isn't part of the Phelps family.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, same thing. He went into to make a film and ended up getting brainwashed into their...
Here's the deal. As a filmmaker who's gone in and done a documentary that was like,
which you have, yeah,
focusing on different sides of one story, of one issue, that
Right.
I went into the whole scenario feeling very strongly about the side that I agreed with.
right.
Now, my opinions on the issue never changed, but I did really start to like and respect the people who I disagreed with.
Is it like Stockholm syndrome? Is it like you're around them so much, or
No. Because think about sort of our modern political landscape, and this is my theory about it now, is that we only associate, for the most part, with people who pretty much view the world the same way as we do.
Totally. Yeah.
You know, like, this is why we feel like in our little blue dot of Salt Lake City, it can be very easy to forget what the rest of Utah is like.
Yeah, totally.
You know,
Yeah.
and so, because, you know, everybody that you rub shoulders, but that's not to say that everybody in Salt Lake is liberal. There's still a lot of people here who are conservative, but I never encounter these people.
Yeah, ever.
Right? But I don't know where they are.
Yeah.
But so anyway, so we're so used to dealing with people who only view the world our way that when we start to, interact with people who are who do view the world differently, and we see them as sort of our political enemies, right? We get to know them, and they're good people,
Right.
You know, well, they're people that you wouldn't mind having be your neighbor,
Right.
because okay, maybe he has kooky ideas about, you know, the NRA or, you know, or federal lands or whatever. You know, he's a good guy.
What are the ideas or opinions that make it so that doesn't count anymore? Because I think
What
that
do you
you
mean,
could
the
feel
ideas or the opinions?
well. So I think that you could also go and make a documentary of a serial killer who's been in prison for the last 10 years,
Sure.
and that'd be a charming, funny, interesting person.
Right. I think there's certain issues that you're just never going to cross over.
That's what I'm
on.
saying, though. Like, where do those start? Because I feel like that with this guy, I mean, isn't the entire idea that he went to make a movie about the fact that these people are bigots,
Right.
and so he obviously had some grasp of the
He probably
concept.
started to like the bigots.
Well, but what I'm wondering is,
people,
right.
right?
But what I'm wondering is, he obviously had strong opinions about the concept of bigotry. You
Right.
can't say that because of this group of people over here that everyone that looks like that person is like that. And he, somewhere along the line, lost track of that entire concept.
Or he was a touchy-feely liberal from an area where there were tons of liberals. He never really processed his own point of view. And he gets out into the world, into middle America, and starts interacting with real middle Americans, right?
Yeah.
And realizes, oh, they're not complete assholes. They're actually really good people.
Right.
But because our political climate is so polarized, we stop seeing the guy on the other side as being a good guy. We'd rather see him as being a total asshole,
Right.
and as jerk and as almost evil,
But
right?
but it wouldn't matter to me. It wouldn't matter to me personally. It wouldn't matter how nice of a guy he is. He helped pull my truck out of the mud that one time. His wife's rhubarb pie is amazing. You know, they're just such sweethearts, and they just hate Muslims. Like, it wouldn't, everything full stop on they hate Muslims. I'm like, you know what? They're
see, here's-
douchebags.
Right.
Period. I don't care.
Right.
Because they're bigots. And so I would have everything else would go right out the window for me, where I'm like, that's great.
Sure.
I hope you enjoy your life.
That's you,
Yeah.
and that's hopefully most people. But I think that, you know, this guy is he's just an example of somebody who hadn't really analyzed his own worldview. And so when all of a sudden he's confronted with just good people, he's used to just sort of going along with all the good people that he knows. I don't know. Maybe my theory is a little simplistic, but I mean that's how I think that a lot of times this happens. I never was going to, like, you know, with my documentary, I was never going to agree with, you know, the people on the other side.
Maybe
of the
that's
issue.
part of it, though, is that you also had
because
an
ultimately it was an
investment.
LGBT issue.
Yeah, and I wonder if maybe that's part of it,
And-
is that if he was Muslim, maybe this whole story would be different, because there's an investment there,
right?
Instead of just being the touchy-feely guy that has zero investment in either side and chooses a side.
Right.
It's just,
and I guess here's
so
also the thing
weird
for
to
me, like the reason why it kind of worked and it was kind of weird, was that a lot of these people reminded me of like family members. And so because my family is really conservative and doesn't really like the whole gay thing and all that. And so like, there's a part of me that's able to still like a person, even though like them as a human being. Right. Even though I know they don't really like everything about me. You know, I think that's kind of a weird thing. Because, I completely get what you're saying. But you sit there and you go through these interviews and you get to like a couple of them, right? There were certain characters I always felt were kind of jerks. Yeah. Well, one person who I thought was a jerk. But I'd sit there and the weird thing about sitting with footage and editing it for a long period of time is, and going over it. And I mean, I edited that film it was over a year. Right. You know,
it was a full length. I mean, it was a full length film, right?
Yeah. It's an hour long. Yeah. And anyways, so, you know, I spent all that time and what's weird is that like the people that you start to really become very affectionate, feel a real affection for, right? And you're like, my God, that person is just awesome. I showed up back down in the little town where I was filming, and I guess why am I being so coy about it? Down in Kanab, and started talking to one of the women in the film, Ruthie, and I don't think she had any sense of like how much I thought of her, like how much and how much time I had sat editing footage where she's walking,
looking at her face.
Yeah. And so it was like really this weird thing where I felt like she was a friend, but she wasn't. Right. And so it even happened that way for like the mayor, who I really think he's the only one who, at the end of the day, I feel like, even though he seems like my dad would really like him. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It doesn't mean that I need to.
Well, you're having, there's vicarious emotion. When I was
editing him, right? I made sure that I always edited him, very fairly, and I always thought of him as like a friend of my dad, as somebody that my dad would really like, in order to pull that off.
Right. You know? Well, you know, I think it's really you hit on something that I don't think I had ever really thought about before until you said it just now, that I think is so completely true in my own life. And I can only imagine for a lot of listeners out there too, is that as someone who is not only not religious, and I like to consider myself not religious more than I do atheist, agnostic, anything like that. I rather think of it as, because I think there's lots of people out there that are atheists that just never think about religion at all, one way or the other. Sure. Yeah. Whereas I am not religious. I don't like the things that religion does to people. I don't like the things that religion does, period, to the world and to people's rights. But I find that I struggle very often to be flat out mean towards religious people. And it is because I do the exact same thing where I project the love that I had for my grandma and grandpa and my extended family, who are all very religious Mormons, that I project those emotions onto people that I see that are religious, and I don't want to hurt people's feelings. Right. And I can't, as much as I want to be like, rah, and like really be this soldier of like, you know, but saying
it's good. It's good that you have that reaction, because that reaction is the one that's going to actually, because like, let's say you did get in the person's face. Yeah. All you do is further solidify the feelings that the beliefs that they have. Yeah. And then possibly yelling back at you is going to do the exact same thing for you, which is, I don't want to get all super entrenched. Yeah. Right. Like I want to be able to take new things on as they approach. And I don't want to have spent all this time being angry and upset and solidifying these pathways in my brain. Yeah. That are like, so whenever that thing comes up again, I only react.
You're totally right. Anger. You're totally right, because one of the things that's the most important to me when I do encounter people that are religious who maybe don't know me is that I am a person who is full of love and goodwill and faith, and believes in the good natured, believes in in the goodness of other people without any Christ involved.
Right.
That I can be all of those things without any religion involved.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that you can't have good faith in other people without believing in the Bible.
Absolutely.
You completely can.
Yeah.
You know, and so I want to be that. And it's hard sometimes because you also at the same time want to be like, but I also think that everything that you believe is just total bullshit. I think it's the silliest thing I've ever heard in my life. And how you spend so much time thinking about it blows my mind.
Right.
You know, but you can't do that without hurting somebody else's feelings.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess you do it on a podcast that they don't listen to. I guess that's how you do it.
I'm going to anticipate the possibility that somebody's going to ask about this documentary on the Facebook page.
Oh yeah. Plug it.
And just
do it. Plug it.
It's the title of it is Natural Family Values. I produced it a few years ago, number of years ago, actually. Now at this point, and you can find it on Amazon. It is available on Amazon. So
how much do you get if somebody buys it on Amazon?
I get a chunk. You can also rent it, and I get a little bit from that too.
You get like a $7 check in the mail, huh?
No, because it has to go over a certain amount before they'll actually send the money. So, which happens very infrequently.
You're sitting at home and you're like,
days.
God, I'd love a bottle of wine. I wonder if they're going to send a check.
No, I haven't touched the account in a while.
How much do you think is in there?
Oh, like $120.
That's cool, though. That might be more than I ever made in my entire musical career.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you're doing pretty good.
No. I mean, when it first hit Amazon, I don't know how this happened, but I received an email on a totally unrelated account. But that was the account that's connected to my Amazon account. So Amazon, and I wasn't the one who put the thing up, right? Like it was a co-producer who actually did a lot of this post-production stuff, and he finally sort of was the one who did it.
Hey,
so
it's on Amazon.
I think his email account is probably the one that's like linked to the film.
Oh, okay.
From Amazon's perspective, and I received the morning after it had gone onto Amazon, I received an email that with 5 documentaries. It was like that said, "These are 5 documentaries that you might enjoy." And mine was at the top of the list.
Oh my God, you're kidding.
It was the most bizarro thing.
That's always the first thing you click on.
It was totally weird.
You know what I mean?
And we got a lot of sales when it first hit Amazon. So anyways, boy, I've really yammered on about that way too long.
No, it's good. It's something that you made. It's a good thing.
So if anybody wants to check it out, go rent it. It's cute. It's fun. Don't buy it.
Don't buy it. Just
Don't
rent
buy
it.
Just rent it.
You're not going to watch it twice. It's like 6 cents. By the time you get to the end of it, you're like, oh, I don't need to watch it.
I have one friend who, she's so sweet. She, I don't even know how many copies she ended up buying, but it was like the gift that she gave to everybody.
Oh, really?
For like a year. Whenever anybody's birthday would come up, or whenever it was like, whenever she would go order a copy of Natural Family Values. And she supported it a lot.
That's pretty awesome, actually.
And so she actually, and giving it as a gift, I know she got it kind of out into the world a little bit too. So
great for Father's Day.
Yeah,
totay's Father's Day. That joke won't sell at all tomorrow.
No, tomorrow when you're downloading this.
Sorry, everybody. That's the problem with those timely jokes.
So yeah. Anywho. What you got? Do you have any, or is it me?
It's
me.
you.
Oh my goodness,
we went that long.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. Here's a fun one, and we can just kind of rush through it. Evangelical silence on Mitt Romney's Mormonism.
God, I almost had this one.
Yeah,
I saw that headline somewhere, and I couldn't stop thinking about that.
Yeah, it's really wild.
It's really hypocritical.
Oh yeah,
it's really, really hypocritical. These guys were like. Every time you turned around, it was like, first it started off with, Bush is going to win the Holy War from the Evangelicals. And you're like, oh, okay, that's pretty crazy. Hopefully in 4 years they'll calm down. Then a black guy wanted to be president and they're like, he might be the Antichrist. And you're like, for real? And now you're finally getting you finally have something to complain about. You finally have something to complain about.
Your candidate.
Yeah.
Your party's candidate.
Yeah.
For president is a Mormon.
Yes.
Which up until 6 months ago, you were calling a cult.
Yeah. It's a really big deal. Y'all should get your own house in order. Stop complaining about the Democrats.
Oh my!
You've got
God.
your own problems here.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And the thing is that's so weird is that I don't know. I wonder if there's something to it that has to do with the power that they know that they wield, right? It's like Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. Mm-hmm. The evangelicals know how powerful that they are, where they can literally make a moderate Republican like John McCain turn into senior crazy pants, right? And within a matter of months, because they're essentially like, hey, bro. Yeah. If you really want this, if you want all of our votes, you better get behind us. And he totally did. Yeah. And essentially ruined any integrity that he had left. Yeah. And now you're like, they must totally realize, like, hey, if we want we don't want him in office anymore, if we don't want President Obama in office anymore, then we've got to get this guy. God. We've got to back off. We got to back off on all this Mormonism equals cult stuff. Don't you think that the Mormon church, I mean, they probably never say it out loud, but behind closed doors, they're like, oh, thank God. Like, he probably won't win, but at least this means that when people talk about us, they don't think we have horns. Right? Because everything's being tamped down in order to make it seem like, if we get, at least he's religious. Oh, God. Yeah, I know. It's really weird. I mean, some weird things have come out for the Mormons. I don't know if you read this thing, and I think it was the New York Times. It was an op-ed. Oh, goodness. I forget what he's like a college professor. He's Mormon. I think he teaches in New York or back east somewhere. Yeah, okay. And he came out and was like, yeah, Mormons aren't Christian. Yeah. Yeah, he fully said it. I did see that. And it was like, whoa, dude. Like, you just opened up a big can of worms. You know how many years we've been trying to say we're Christians? Yeah. Don't do that. We actually increased the size of the font so that Jesus Christ is bigger than the rest of the words in the name of our church. Our Jesus Christ is spelled just like yours is. That's hello, because it used to they were all the same size as the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, and it was all the same size except for like the and the ofs, and so it was like. And so now they've like made it Jesus Christ, so you see it, and they're trying to downplay the whole of Latter-day Saints thing because like, what is that? Yeah, totally. And it's like it's like made with real milk. It's like when it's like you need to really show that like it's the same Jesus as your guys's. Mm-hmm. It's all the same Jesus. I used to hate telling people I was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Honestly, if your church has more than 3 words in it. Ugh. I think every time that you add another word to it, the spookier your church becomes. Oh, yeah. Right? I hated it. I hated saying it. I hated it all growing up. It was so much more easy when I could just get away with saying that I was Mormon, but that was so frowned upon in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was like a derogatory term. Totally shying away from the word Mormon. Yeah. Now they love it. They're like, and I'm a Mormon. Yeah. Like, they love doing it now. Somebody finally got to them and was like, embrace it. They should just change it and say, we're Christians, but we also think that Native Americans were the lost tribes of Israel. Well, can't they just call it that? Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do. They came to America on boats that they built out of coconuts or something. I don't think it was coconuts, but I like that. Close. Yeah. Something like that. It might as well be. Yeah, it's some Swiss Family Robinson shit for sure. Yeah, they built boats and made it all the way to America. Yeah. But here's what our listeners probably don't know, is that the Book of Mormon actually has 2 stories of groups of people from the Middle East making it all the way to America. Yeah. Because the main story that everybody always talks about is the Lamanites and the Nephites and all of that, right, all that. Right. Preceding all of them by like... How many? Like 1,000 years or something like that. Yeah. Supposedly there was also this other group called the Jaredites. Yeah. Jaredites. The Book of Ether, right? Yeah. And they did the exact same thing. They were instructed to build like these barges. Yeah. And this is the story of the finger of God touching the stones. Mm-hmm. So the stones glowed and gave light inside the barge. Which totally reminds me of Temple of Doom. Oh, yeah. It's totally, totally. Shabbat, and he puts the rock in and it glows. Right. Yeah. Somebody should make... Spielberg should make that into a movie. Oh. God. Oh, Book of Mormon? Book of Mormon. Yeah. Be really scary. The Mormons tried to make a Book of Mormon movie, but
ugh.
No, you need Peter Jackson or somebody.
Oh my God. To be honest,
it'd be a thrilling movie.
There are parts of it that if you pick to tell the story of that one part, not too bad.
Yeah.
You could definitely have some fun with it.
It would just totally turn into Battlefield Earth, though, where it was it's essentially gross. You're just like, we're fucking crazy. Like, it wouldn't matter. Here's the thing that I think people forget, though, is that when people are like, that is the craziest story in the world, why would anybody ever believe that story? The thing that they're forgetting is that when Joseph Smith wrote all this stuff, it was during that era where news took so long to get places that guys like Edgar Allan Poe could create like elaborate hoaxes of like, who did fly the hot air balloon to the moon? And you believe it. You're like, oh, sure, of course he did. Okay. They took hot air balloons and went to the moon, which is literally one of the hoaxes that I think it was Poe that actually made up that hoax. And it took like a week before people were like, oh, that didn't really happen. So to be like, they built a boat and they sailed it to America. Like, that doesn't seem outlandish at all. That seems like, at the time, it was like, well, yeah, why couldn't you? Yeah. Why couldn't you just do that?
The Joseph Smith was not the one who invented the story of ancient Israelites, making their way across the ocean to the New World. Right. And that they were the source of the Native Americans, right? Like, I mean, it's lunacy, but he liked the idea, and he was a total charlatan. So, like, he saw a buck in it, and so he went for it, and he did. Yeah, well, because he was a soothsayer. He was a diviner, right? Well,
you're talking about a guy that kept a mummy, and was like, "Hey, kids, you want to see Abraham?" And he would charge like neighborhood kids. Like, I know that sounded a lot more.
That sounded really creepy.
Yeah, it sounded a lot creepy.
Well, is that what you call it?
Yeah,
Abraham.
I don't know. It's not a whole lot.
Come see Father Abraham.
It's not a whole lot creepier. I mean, right? I mean, how much creepier is that really than just like let me show you the body, that I have in my house. Yeah, that's pretty creepy.
A mummy.
Yeah, it's a mummy. A mummy. It's remains. It's human remains.
It is. But if you call it a mummy, it's different.
I have a mummy in my living room.
Right. I would deal with that much better than I have a corpse in my living room.
It's the same thing.
It is the same thing. But if you came to me and said, hey, you know what? I have a mummy in my living room. You want to see it? I'd be like, you know what? I think I do. But if you were like, hey, I've got a corpse in my living room, I'd be like calling the cops on you. Right? There's a difference.
5 pence. 5 pence for a minute's look.
Okay. All right. What else have we got going on?
This is kind of a crazy one. Okay. This is a headline. Whew.
Okay. Let's hear it.
More than 200 church leaders across the country now say they no longer believe in God.
Wait. What?
More than 200 church leaders across the country now say they no longer believe in God, including a Houston area pastor who was one of the first to publicly announce his decision.
Whoa.
Okay. Mike Oss, A-U-S, who was pastor at Thelonious Monk Church in Caddy, made the announcement during an appearance on Sunday morning show on MSNBC. Hardly anyone reads the Bible, said Oss on Up with Chris Hayes' program. If they did, the whole thing would be in trouble.
Wow. Wait a second.
Say it again.
I think it's Theophilus. I'm across the room, so I really can't see your
I think
screen.
You're right. Theophilus church members told Local 2 Investigates that they were blindsided by the announcement. They said they had no idea that Oss had completely changed his beliefs until they saw him on the program. Are you going to preach next Sunday? Host Chris Hayes asked Oss. I'm going to go back next week and meet with my leadership and talk about where we go from here, said Oss. We'll see. He was a longtime Lutheran pastor at churches in the Houston area, but now says he no longer believes in the message that he's been preaching for almost 20 years.
My goodness.
As I started jettison the beliefs, I came to realize fairly recently that there wasn't a whole lot left. The effect was immediate in his church with about 80 members. Weeks after his announcement, the church dissolved. Members did not want to talk with Local 2 on camera, but they said their pastor's complete change in faith was devastating, as you can imagine it would be. When a pastor comes forward and says... I love this. When a pastor comes forward and says, I don't believe anymore, it rocks their world, said Dr. Keith Jenkins, a Methodist pastor and former president of Houston Graduate School of Theology. Members see pastors as spiritual superheroes.
Yeah. If he lost his faith, who else could lose their faith?
One thing I think is interesting is like that, he said, they see their pastors as spiritual superheroes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would have to actually argue the opposite. I think that if you're the guy that's sort of, leading the wagon train, so to speak, it's got to be 100 times harder for you, because every time that a member of your congregation dies, anytime anything happens in that community, people are coming to you for this, for these answers. And pastors don't get divine revelation. I mean, most of them aren't. Well, most of them are. Well, but I'm just saying.
You act like it's a thing. You said like. Well, they don't get divine revelation.
Yeah, so
like,
they're really on the
actually.
Yeah, they're low on the totem pole. No, what I mean is that I think that guys that feel like that they do get. I think that religious leaders who think that they do get that kind of divine revelation find it easier to come up with easy answers for people. Whereas to me, I think pastors, for the most part, are just guys that are like. You sort of end up in that job after so long in the community, and
they feel a calling, so to speak, right?
But
they feel that there's something within them.
I'm surprised that there aren't.
I have to say, it seems like it would be a cushy job.
Oh my God, right?
It seems like you've got all the shit of a whole community that gets like pounded on you, but
it's like
I've got to say. Like, just to have, like, office hours and have people come and go and just talk to people and shake hands and smile and wish them well and prepare a little speech,
God, maybe you're
once
right.
a week.
It's also...
that sounds like a kick-ass job.
How about the community perks?
Oh, yeah.
I bet you never pay for a frozen yogurt in your town.
Well, you just have to know the right frozen yogurt stand.
Oh my God, though. It'd be like it's like a small town mobster. Like you just you get new tires put on your car for free. You get I think probably all that stuff is just
and
like
you hit the nail on the head. You want the small town one. You want a city of about 50,000 people or less. And then I think it's an awesome job. But you would either have to be a believer or be a liar about that belief. And he obviously was unwilling to continue lying about it.
Jenkins said, many church leaders question and then lose their faith, but never before has it been a public phenomenon. It's almost gone viral, said Jenkins.
Wow. So is there like a list of other pastors, ministers, reverends?
The website www.clergyproject.com has become a confidential gathering group for pastors, ministers, and other church leaders who no longer believe in God. The group said it has more than 240 members.
Wow.
Some, like us, have gone public. Most other church leaders in that group have kept their new lack of belief hidden from others, including their congregations.
In order to keep their job.
Yeah.
Because seriously, like, what do you do with that?
Wow. Imagine hacking that website, getting all the IP addresses of everybody and just sending out mailers.
That's kind of like outing people. I don't like outing people.
No, I agree.
Although they are hypocrites, and that's the one scenario. That's why that one movie, what was it, Outraged?
Right.
Where they actually outed
people who had publicly spoken out against gay and lesbian.
I mean, but who were,
What do you? Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. What do you do there? What do you do? So I have this congregation. Mm-hmm. I no longer believe,
right?
But I'm keeping it secret because I know that this church that is a huge part of this community,
right?
That all these people need me to get up there and say these things to make them feel like that they understand their lives and why little Timmy got cancer and why the cat got run over, God knows what, right?
Sure,
that I have to give those answers. What is my responsibility?
Well, I think you have a responsibility to truth. I think you need to come out. I think you need to. I mean, I don't think that there's really any dilemma here. I think that these religious leaders, they need to come out. They owe it to their community, for one, and for two, and it's something that they probably don't feel yet, is a connection to other atheists and the atheist movement.
Oh, no, I'm sure that they... I mean,
so
I think they're joining this website because they feel so alone.
Exactly.
So what about this, though? What about... Okay, let me give you an A-B scenario. Do I, A, come out and tell my entire congregation that I'm an atheist, or do I, B...
Like over the pulpit?
Yeah, or do I just retire?
Great.
Or do I just retire? And I let a new guy come in... And I'm around for another year, and then I just quietly move out of town one night.
No. I like the drama of coming out.
Why, though? Why?
Because...
For the people that still believe, why not just let them keep fucking believing in it? It gives them... You don't shake their faith at all.
Because guaranteed there's people out there in that congregation who are there and don't believe. Who are there for
so in a way it is like coming out of the closet.
Oh yeah, no, it's the exact same thing. That's why
community
need to be more vocal. We need to start really self-identifying as atheists.
Okay,
we need to let our family members know. And I know that it's a painful thing.
And then the little old ladies out in the congregation that still have their faith, if it's strong enough, it won't be shook by the fact that I am.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what? One of those little old ladies might be an old cold stone atheist.
Yeah.
But she's been coming to that church forever, and,
Yeah.
And you stepping down, she might be like, you know what? At least I still know this kind atheist, and we'll have tea on Thursdays.
It's like my friend that I know that, he had completely become an atheist, but every time he'd come into town, he would still go to church with his mom, and his mom, who had become an atheist, would still go to church with her son because each one thought it's like a bad sitcom.
Right.
Each one thought the other...
Right.
They're still really into this, so I don't want to say anything.
Yeah.
And it turns out both of them are like, oh my God.
Really.
Yeah, like, oh God, okay, we don't have to do that anymore.
Right. Like, that's why
it feels sad to me for some reason. Like, not for the pastor.
Right.
Like, I feel sad that guy feels like that he might have to stay in the closet about atheism. I just that idea, I mean, it seems like something out of a movie of getting up in front of everybody and being like, there is no God.
Well, I think there's a way to handle it, But what are you concerned about here?
I don't know.
Like, I don't.
It just seems sad for some reason
I don't think it's sad.
to the people that do believe.
I know that we talk about the need to be nice and all that kind of stuff, but I think that scenario, you get up, you give a nice little sermon, and you sort of end it. You kind of lead it up to a point, and you say, my beliefs have changed over the the last little bit, and as of today, I am resigning
because I no longer believe in God.
I
guess I'm just picturing that. Like,
I don't think
I'm picturing this guy, awesome, that got on MSNBC and did this, and just this part, just like the effect was immediate in his church with about 80 members. Weeks after his announcement, the church dissolved. There's something like in my head. I'm picturing like all these people walking out, like the movie's finally ended, and they're like walking out and blinking in the sunlight, like, oh no.
I like that ending.
No one's watching the store. Like there's something about that that's just heartbreaking to me. I mean, because I'm comfortable in my belief system, but I can only imagine what a terrifying world it would be to suddenly like have this guy who probably like blessed your child when they were born be like, there is no God.
Right.
I just don't. But I love my life, but I don't wish that on somebody else.
But for the kind of community church that you're talking about, I don't want to say. I mean, yes, okay. All of a sudden, these people lost their community, right? They lost their church family, right? Most members of community churches, in my mind, yes, maybe a few of them grew up entirely at that one congregation. These are people who come and go from churches in a very different way. It's not like Mormonism or Catholicism where there's like this centralized sense of like, and sense of almost a singular identity. And maybe I should just stick with Mormonism here.
Right.
Of like this really singular identity where you do belong to that local congregation, and that is sort of your momentary church family.
We're Mormons.
But you're Mormon.
Right.
And yeah, the Baptists have that. Of course, all these different groups, they're Lutheran, they're Baptist, they're this, they're that.
I guess you're right.
But
Like
I think I do think it's a little different than the religious tradition that you're coming from and are most familiar with. It's not like Salt Lake all of a sudden dissolved. Right. Which brings me to a thought that I've always kind of toyed with and wondered about, which is how many non-true believers are down there?
Oh yeah. Oh
because
God, yeah.
The people who believe
in
in sort of the life and the quality of life that comes from Mormonism and the sense of community and family and all of that.
Yeah.
That they see it because they're inside of it and there's like, oh, this good thing and tradition.
I have family members that have done that. I have family members that went for years based solely upon the idea of like this will signal some sea change if I stop going. So it's easier for me to not believe and just give up a couple hours on a Sunday, and then I still get to keep all my friends.
Right. Because that was always my reaction to Gordon B. Hinckley, the most, not the current president of the church, the one right before. I never felt that he was a true believer. Because he always seemed, I think he had sort of a cozy, nice feeling about like Jesus, and I think what he believed in more than anything though was Mormonism, not any. I don't think he was not a hardliner.
He believed in his community.
And
because he
definitely bore testimony of Christ and all that,
but he hasn't said half the controversial shit that what's his bucket? Who's the guy now?
Thomas S. Monson.
The stuff that he's said, Monson has thrown
Boyd
down.
K. Packer, who's like next in line.
These guys are gauntlet, man.
They are true believers, and so they come out and they have a totally different approach, totally different attitude about it. Whereas I never got that from Hinckley. Hunter, who was around just like for 2 weeks, didn't get that sense from him at all. He was just a nice old man in a wheelchair. And he was like president of the church for like 6 months or something. Like he was not around for long.
Did he die?
Yeah. Oh, they always die.
That's how they die, and then there's a new one.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
And there's a strict hierarchy to it as well. They say that they like go in and they wait for the Spirit to confirm who the next one's going to be.
But they know who the next one's going to be.
Oh yeah, it's never deviated.
But they have to die before they get the next one.
Oh yeah, yeah. The prophet dies, and then a new prophet steps up.
It's like the.
So that's why Boyd K. Packer is the next one in line. And it's all just seniority. Who was called to the Quorum of the 12 first? Because it's the Quorum of the 12, but there's like 14 or 15 of them, right? Yeah. Depending on how you're kind of counting it, and I can't remember how they officially sort of look at it. But there's the Quorum of the 12, and when there's a sitting prophet with his two counselors, there's 12 of them,
right?
And then there's the prophet and his two counselors, right?
And so then when one of them goes up, somebody else gets to be part of the quorum?
When the prophet dies, his two counselors go take their place back in the Quorum of the 12 in sort of the hierarchy, the seniority.
But one of those guys that was his counselor gets to be the...
Not one of the counselors.
Oh.
The counselors are not based on seniority. The prophet calls his two counselors out of the Quorum of the 12.
So it's the next oldest?
It's not the next oldest, the next longest serving.
Oh.
Okay, so... That's why Hinckley was around forever, because he was called to the Quorum of 12 as a pretty young man.
And that bastard just wouldn't die.
Oh, and then he lived to a ripe old age, right? And so, like, he was, 14, 15 years? Like, one of the longest serving presidents of the Mormon Church in a very long time. And so anyways, he... and then, of course, now there's Thomas S. Monson, who will be around for a while, I'm sure.
And then when he dies...
Everybody suspects that Boyd K. Packer will go first.
Right.
He'll go before Thomas S. Monson and thank the Maker. Well, Mormons should be thanking the Maker. I wish he actually did ascend, because the guy, I think he'd scare some people out of the church.
Sure.
Especially with sort of the strides that the church has been taking to be more open and accepting and trying to and being friendly to the gay community. They're not they're not accepting, I mean, technically, in a weird way, they are accepting gays into the church, but then there's this whole caveat that you can't be sexually active, you can't be partnered, and all that.
Can't leave the house. Can't. Right? No one can say your name in public.
It's not really a cool or awesome, open accepting of, they're not accepting homosexuality. But anyways, we've talked about that at length on other episodes. Listen to those ones if you want to know more about
I had
that.
no idea that's how they did that, though.
And so it's all set up on this hierarchy. But I guarantee if Boyd K. Packer came along like today and started like, he's the one that they had to like re-edit. They had to edit what he said. And the official transcript that gets published in the Ensign, which is the Mormon monthly magazine that goes out, they always publish transcripts of everybody's speech from General Conference.
They edited his?
They changed what he said because he came out and he said stuff that was just like, I mean, it was not the official stance of the church anymore. And so instead of like saying that, all they did was just change the transcript.
What did he say?
It was something about, I think it was something about homosexuality or race, maybe. It was one of those like, whoa, you're an old man. Stop it. Stop being an old man.
The College and the Jew folks, when they get angry, will levitate. Turn off his mic. Turn off his mic.
Kill the feed.
One dies and then another one.
Yeah.
It's like the Skeksis from the Dark Crystal.
Yeah. Well, what's strange is that nobody caught it beforehand because they have to provide a written copy of their speech. Well, that's not entirely true. They're supposed to provide a written copy of their speech because they do simultaneous translation. And so they have all these translators who are like translating in like 35 different languages live while it's happening.
Yeah. Oh, God. How great it would have been to get some of their faces while they're just like click, 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 click. Click, 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 click.
Click, click, click. Speaking, translating.
Oh, they're translating. They're actually speaking.
They're listening to it in English, so it goes out in Italian and German and French.
Oh, I didn't know that they were actually
Spanish
doing
and Japanese. All these languages get simultaneously transferred or translated.
It's like the UN.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, it is. They have a huge setup for it because they're a global church.
Right, because they've sent out missionaries all around the world.
Yeah. It's wild. I listened to the Italian one once, and it was really weird.
Yeah, I bet.
Because it's just like Italian immigrants to
Do
the
they try
US
and like put on
some missionaries who like speak like at a really high fluent level?
Do they put on different voices when they're doing different people?
They actually, if I remember right, they swap out.
Oh,
because. Well, I mean, they're not doing it like
one guy.
It's not like the prophet always has his translator, right? It's not like that. But they'll have like two or three because it's just simultaneous translation is exhausting.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I mean, I did it at the level that I spoke Italian.
I don't think my brain could do that. Actually,
one time, like a few times, I did it, and until like it's fairly exhausting.
I don't even think I could do that English to English. If you were talking right now and I was trying to repeat all the words that you were saying,
I couldn't slip into it.
Really?
You slip into the pattern. It's really strange though, like because
I'm trying to imagine doing it right now as you're talking, and I'm like, "There's no way I couldn't do it." I'd be like, "You're listening, I can't do it."
It is strange, and I don't know why we have the capacity to do that, but we do. Hey, let's skip the rest of everything that we had prepared.
Okay.
Movie review. Hey, check out Hell House.
God, we go long when it's me and you.
I know we have a hard time.
We can still talk about Hell House next time I'm on.
Yeah, let's do that.
We never got around the Dallas thing again either.
I know. We'll have to do... Maybe what we do next time is we just have an Adam episode.
Hey!
And we
Hey, everybody, it's me. I hope people out there think that this was less mean than last time I was on. We got some comments last time about how the episode was so mean. And I was like... at first, I took it personally, and then you were like, to be fair, Adam, I'm the one that said, fuck your fucking Bible. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's true. That wasn't me. That was you. So maybe I'm a bad influence on Frank.
Yeah. Anyways. But anyways, if you have not ever checked out the documentary Hell House, totally check it out. It came out in the early 2000s, and it follows the story. I mean, at this point, people probably have heard of Hell House.
Well, you know what they're doing now?
Spread.
You know what they're doing on the East Coast now is that there's a theater group that puts on a completely By the book, no tongue-in-cheek, no irony, no nothing. It is exactly the same as the ones in the movie. They put on a Hell House in New York City.
Oh, wow.
And this whole theater group puts it on essentially just, and it really, it's a very different kind of dialogue because people are really upset, but they try to explain in the beginning before it starts, this is supposed to be as authentic. We're using all the same dialogue, same scripts. So they were able to buy the scripts because they sell, the people that do the Hell House,
they sell it to like other churches.
Yeah, they sell the whole packages online.
Oh my God.
So you can build your own.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so this theater group puts it on just to show like this is how scary what they're doing is.
Just so you kind of understand what we mean by Hell House. Around Halloween, there's this church that sort of was the one that got this all started down in a suburb of Dallas, I think.
Yeah.
Trinity Assembly of God.
Yeah.
And they've set this sort of alternative spook alley up as they reenact all these scenes.
And
so there would be like
scenes,
a rape scene.
Yeah, there's
or
one
an abortion gone wrong scene.
Or a kid that shoots up his classroom, or
Right.
a gay man dying of AIDS begging for forgiveness. And in each one of these scenes, you see the characters that are playing. So the kid has the gun in the classroom, and a demon. A person dressed up, red-faced demon comes into the room and convinces this kid to kill the whole classroom of people.
Right.
So each one of them has a demon in it.
Right.
At the very end, when you get to the very end of it, then pastors come into the room and basically are like, if you think that maybe you're like one of these people in these scenes and you need to get right with the Lord, I'm going to count to 5 and you can walk through this door right here and there's people waiting to pray with you on the other side. And it's intense when you watch it.
My
people
heart
are like
was beating
crying.
And I was like, I don't want to go through the door.
Yeah, exactly. Do I have to go through the door? Where's the other exit?
I'm just sitting at home watching it on my iPad.
Oh, totally.
It's like, whoa.
No, it really. And you were kind of like you had more of a sort of a little bit of a flippant attitude, like those people are crazy. And I was like, it really. Like I was really unsettled. Like I thought about it for weeks. Just like it really. The fact that the worst one for me was the girl who got raped and now is trying to have an abortion, and the demon is next to her telling her that it was her fault that she got raped.
Yeah.
And in that scenario, it's her father that raped her. And it's like the fact that that's the line they're trying to toe, or the one where the demon is going to pull the gay man into hell because he was gay.
Right.
It seriously was so. And there's like one scene of like kids these juggalo kids that go through it that come out the other side that want to go and argue with one of the pastors that was in charge of it.
Right.
And it's so sad because it just makes you realize that this lone voice of these dumb juggalo kids, they're like, but dude, that's not the way things should be. And he's like, well, the thing is, kids, and you're like, get me in that movie. I want to be in them. I want to argue with that guy. I want to be. Kids, come here for a minute.
Yeah.
Let me give you some tips. You know, and there's no one else there to argue a second opinion.
Well, you can't argue in that kind of scenario. All you could do is maybe just say that was really tasteless.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only kind of critique you could possibly. You couldn't ever get down to like the theology or the this or the that. You'd have to just say, it's actually quite tasteless. But the thought that I did have, and we're ended up doing a review.
You have 30 seconds.
We said we weren't going to do a review.
You have 30 seconds, so you just say "fuck your fucking Bible" and you leave because there's nothing else you can say, right?
Well, yeah. Oh my God. No, I know we said we wouldn't do a review, but the thing that really struck me watching it was that because at first you can't understand why these really religious, really conservative, and believe me, sheltered. You listen to some of these conversations that they're having about like what things are called and this and that. And they don't know anything about any of it.
Raves, magic
and they're trying to create
D&D.
scenes that will ring true to people.
Yeah.
But anyway, so like it's like, why would those people choose and get so into it? Like, I mean, this is like the popular event of the year for this church.
Kids get so excited when they're like, I get to have a gun and kill somebody this year.
Well, no, I'm the raped girl.
Yeah.
I'm the raped girl.
Yeah.
And she's super excited.
Or the one guy that gets to put on a fake rave because they need a rave scene, and he used to be a raver, and so he gets to be a DJ, and he's like so excited.
Well, it made me think of the sort of in the Middle Ages, the sort of what New Year's was for a lot of Christianity, and it was this moment when they were allowed. God, I hope I'm getting this right. Where they were allowed to do whatever. And so the priests would, and this may have been like the 1200s or 1300s, or like this was not like recent Europe. This was kind of right in the dark days of the Middle Ages. And anyway, so of medieval time, and so they the priests would actually like. They would go have sex. They would go nuts. They would drink. They'd booze it up. The nuns would go nuts. Everybody would go nuts.
Right.
Everybody would go out and just like party and have a big old time. And it was this catharsis.
Right.
It was this one moment where you could get it out of your system. Whatever the stuff was that you were fighting off, there was this one moment, this one day where you could just push it aside.
Well, I remember that
you could, in a sense, the whole year, whenever you had those urges, whenever those temptations came up, you would be able to just say, I have a day for that.
Wow.
And it actually worked as a really interesting mechanism. And so I wonder if this isn't doing sort of the same thing for this community, where they're allowed to sort of let off steam because they're allowed to, like, you know, say some pretty mean things in these scripts.
Right.
And they're able to, like...
And here's... And cry and scream and really imitate murder, or imitate sex or drug use.
Yeah.
Well, here's another take on that same idea. So Rasputin the monk was part of a long sect of monks that were called... I think they were called flagellants. And it was their entire way of understanding God was out of self-flagellation, right?
Sure.
But in order to be able to do that, to self-punish by whipping or preying on while kneeling on broken glass, or, you know, wearing rocks in their shoes,
right,
all these different things, the only way that they were able to do that is if they were repenting for sin. And because they were monks, they would go out to towns and bring prostitutes back. They would buy wine, and they would have these orgies.
No way.
So that they then had sinned enough in order to then be punished. Right. And that, in a way, almost
because they believed that the punishment was good, so you needed to
do something in order to need the punishment. Yeah. And so you think about these kids wanting to be like, well, yeah, I'm pretending to have sex, and then I get to shoot somebody in the face, but this is going to help people understand the glory of God. Right? Like that the payoff at the end of it is still not that, oh, I want to do this thing. It's, oh, I'm only doing it so I can teach a lesson.
Yeah.
Fucking creepy.
All right. Well, you can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/TGIAtheist. Follow us on Twitter @TGIAtheist. Our email address is podcast@thankgodimatheist.com. It's been a little while since we've gotten an email, so send us an email.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, there has to be something in here that people agree or disagree with.
And then our voicemail is 424-666-8442. And the place that seems to be really hot right now is the Facebook page. So that's if you're really wanting to interact with people, that's where I would go.
We'll put the picture of I want you to kill the infidels on there.
All right.
It's very funny.
Okay.
Thanks again for having me.
Well, thank you, Adam.
Yeah.
It's nice to know, and we should have probably covered this at the beginning of the hour, where Dan is. Dan.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we all know that he's in Europe, right? He's been in the UK.
But now
he's actually now in Sweden.
That's right.
They're in Stockholm. They're doing the summer solstice festival that they have in Sweden. And I say they. His wife has gone over, and some really good friends of theirs, and they've all gone over to kind of meet up with well, not meet up. They're all meeting up in Stockholm. And then they're going to do like a tour of Eastern Europe for the next few weeks. And so
I hope he doesn't get too bored.
I know, right?
Poor guy.
We're playing it by ear. We don't know what's going to be going on for next week. It could be that Dan is in a spot that's got good Wi-Fi and we're able to do it. Or it could be that it's Adam or somebody else. We really don't know. So, but
if it's me, I'm excited
so
to do it. Yeah, of course, man. I love doing this. It's definitely a topic I don't get to talk about a lot.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun to have you, and thank you, and thank you for letting us use your facility.
Yeah, of course,
as well.
Of course,
so,
yeah.
Well, all right. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for listening, guys.
See ya.
Bye-bye.